This is my story. I am Maya Torres, 29 years old. She stole my career in one meeting, one smile, one click, and my future was hers. But I don't lose, I destroy. The agency's glass walls reflected the coastal city's golden light, casting a glow over a floor buzzing with ambition. Designers huddled over laptops, copywriters argued over taglines, and mood boards splashed with color lined every corner. I stood at a pinboard, securing the final piece of a campaign concept that had consumed my mind for weeks. My fingers were steady, but my chest was tight with a storm I hadn't yet named. Across the open plan space, Leila Bennett leaned casually against Greg Sullivan's desk, her laughter rising above the hum of voices. The sunlight caught her perfect blonde waves, making her look like she belonged in a luxury perfume ad. Greg, our creative director, smirked like he was in on a private joke. I'd once believed Leila was my ally, someone I could trust in the shark-infested waters of agency life. Today, I was about to learn just how wrong I'd been. 6 months earlier, I had sat in a cluttered conference room surrounded by coffee cups and crumpled napkins, riding the high of a creative breakthrough. The campaign was for a sustainable fashion brand, and I'd built it around the soul of the project: real artisans, raw stories, and a celebration of craft over mass production. Leila had leaned forward during my pitch, her eyes shining with what I thought was genuine admiration. "Maya, you're a genius," she'd said, scribbling furiously in her notebook. "This artisan angle? It's going to seal the deal. We're a team, right?" I believed her, heart swelling with trust. I shared everything: my research, my contacts, the late-night revisions I'd done until my eyes ached. I thought we'd walk into that client meeting as partners. I didn't know that trust was the first thing she would weaponize against me. Now, Greg was at the head of a packed conference room, the hum of the projector casting my vision onto the wall. Every artisan story, every piece of community outreach, every polished detail was mine, yet slide after slide bore only one name: Leila Bennett. She sat in the front row, chin lifted, smiling like the queen of the creative world. The client's praise poured in, calling the campaign fresh and revolutionary. Greg beamed as if he'd mentored a prodigy, clapping Leila on the shoulder and calling her the agency's rising star. My hands dug into my lap until my nails bit skin, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt erased. After the meeting, I cornered Leila in the hallway, my voice tight enough to snap. "That was my campaign. You stole it. Every idea, every contact, you took it all." My pulse was a drum in my ears, but I forced myself to meet her gaze, her lips curved into a smirk, her eyes glittering with malice. "Don't be so dramatic, sweetie. Ideas float around. I just made them shine. Greg knows I'm the one who delivers. You're not cut out for the spotlight." She walked away, her heels clicking like a metronome, counting down to something I couldn't yet name, but I knew I wasn't going to let this go. That night, my balcony felt colder than usual, the city lights blurred by unshed tears. My younger brother Luis sat across from me, soda can sweating in his hand, his easy grin replaced by a sharp-edged concern. I told him everything: the betrayal, Greg's complicity, the promotion that was slipping through my fingers. "Leila stabbed you in the back," Luis said, leaning forward. "And Greg's just as bad for letting her. You're the best they've got, Maya. You gonna let them spit on you like this?" My fingers tightened around my glass until the condensation ran down my arm. No, I said, my voice low but steady. I'm going to make her choke on that smirk. The next morning, I headed into the office with a new kind of focus, a cold, sharp edge humming beneath my calm exterior. I didn't bother glancing at Leela when she breezed past me in the hallway, chatting about weekend plans like she hadn't just gutted my career. Let her think I was licking my wounds. I found Nina Patel in the office library, a tucked-away nook smelling faintly of old paper and ambition. She was hunched over a design book, her dark eyes flicking up as I approached. Nina wasn't just a coworker, she was one of the few people I trusted. When I told her what happened, her expression hardened into something fierce. She's been playing you for months, Maya, she said flatly. What's the move? Leela's sloppy, I told her, keeping my voice low. She's been downloading my files, leaving a trail. And Greg's been making shady deals with clients, cutting corners for bonuses. If I can prove both, I'll bury them together. My tone was steady, but the satisfaction I felt at saying it out loud was electric. Nina leaned back against the bookshelf, a slow grin spreading across her face. You're out for blood, she said. I'm here for it. Let's make them squirm. Her approval felt like fuel. This wasn't going to be a quick strike, it was going to be a calculated dismantling. Over the next few days, we worked late under the bluish glow of our laptops, moving through the office like ghosts. I combed through shared drive logs, each timestamp another nail in Leela's coffin, 67 unauthorized downloads of my campaign files, clear as day. Nina dug into Greg's inbox, uncovering a pattern of overpromising deadlines to clients in exchange for personal bonuses. His arrogance bled through every message. Together, we built a meticulous file, encrypting it and backing it up in 3 separate places. This wasn't just about exposing them, it was about making sure they could never recover. One afternoon, I lingered near the break room and overheard voices through the half-open door. Leela's tone was syrupy, but her words hit like glass shards. With this campaign, the creative lead role's mine, right? She purred. Greg chuckled in response. You're a star, Leela. Maya's got ideas, but she's no leader. You're the one I trust. My teeth clenched, my pulse hammering. They weren't just stealing my work, they were rewriting my worth. I walked away quietly, every step tightening the coil inside me. That night, Nina and I finalized our arsenal. The flash drive in my hand felt heavier than it should have it carried. Both my rage and my proof. This has everything, I told her. The downloads, Greg's deals, emails proving they knew exactly what they were doing. Her eyes narrowed with interest. That's enough to sink them. I shook my head. It's enough to sink them, but I want them humiliated. Leela's been bragging online, posting about her campaign. I'm sending those posts and my original drafts to the client anonymously. Let's see her talk her way out of that. Nina grinned like I just told her the best joke she'd ever heard. The next morning, I walked into Carla Evans's office, the flash drive tucked into my palm like a weapon. Carla, our 50-year-old COO, was a woman who radiated authority without raising her voice. Her desk was a fortress of neat stacks and sharp corners. I slid the drive across the surface. Leela Bennett's been stealing my campaigns. Greg Sullivan's been enabling her while chasing kickbacks. Everything you need to prove it is on their logs, emails, screenshots. My voice didn't waver. This wasn't a request. Carla's brow furrowed as she studied me. You're accusing your team lead and a coworker of serious misconduct. Are you absolutely certain? I'm not just certain, I said, leaning forward. I have 67 file downloads from Leela's account. Greg's emails show he knew, and Leela's been bragging online posts that match my time-stamped drafts. The client will recognize them instantly. The silence stretched until Carla plugged in the drive, her eyes scanning the files with surgical precision. Her expression shifted from skepticism to something darker. This is egregious, she said finally. I'll verify everything with IT and legal. If it checks out, heads will roll. Until then, you keep this to yourself, I nodded once. As I left her office, the weight in my chest eased slightly. I'd handed over the proof. Now all I had to do was wait for the fuse to burn down, and I intended to enjoy every second of it. A week passed, the office thick with an unspoken tension. Leela strutted in each morning like she was untouchable, her laugh cutting through the air. Greg grew jumpier by the day, glancing at his phone every time it buzzed. I kept my head down, working as if nothing was wrong. Inside, I was counting the days. Every passing hour was another step toward the explosion. Nina would catch my eye from across the room, and we'd exchange a look that said soon. When Carla's all-hands meeting invite hit our inboxes, the air shifted instantly. People whispered in corners, speculating about a new client or a restructuring. I knew better that afternoon. The entire team gathered in the conference room. Leela and Greg sat front and center, all smiles. I took a seat beside Nina, my pulse steady, my face unreadable. Carla entered, her heels clicking against the floor like a judge walking into court. The verdict was about to be read. Carla didn't waste time. She set a folder on the table and looked directly at the team. An internal investigation has confirmed that Leela Bennett misrepresented contributions to multiple campaigns, stealing work from colleagues. Greg Sullivan failed in oversight and engaged in unethical client practices for personal gain. Gasps rippled through the room. A few heads turned toward me, others toward Leela. Greg stiffened, his jaw tight. Leela's face went pale, then flushed an angry red. The silence after Carla's words was almost satisfying enough on its own. Almost. That's a lie. Leela snapped, her voice trembling with rage. I created that campaign from scratch. Maya had nothing to do with it. She scanned the room for support, her voice climbing in pitch. I stood slowly, the chair legs scraping against the floor. 67 file downloads, Leela, I said, my tone calm and deliberate. From your account, my contacts, my research, my drafts. You posted them online, claiming they were yours. The client saw those posts yesterday side by side with my originals. Leela's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted toward Greg, who avoided looking at her. Carla folded her arms. We've confirmed the timestamps, the logs, and the social media evidence. Leela, you're fired effective immediately. Greg, you're on leave pending termination. The words landed like a gavel striking wood. Leela's composure cracked, her breathing shallow. Greg's shoulders slumped. They looked like two gamblers caught with marked cards in the middle of the casino floor. Security appeared in the doorway, and the room's quiet shifted into a low buzz of whispered disbelief. Leela gathered her bag with shaking hands, her heels hammering the floor as she stormed out. Greg followed, his steps slower, his face blank. I sat back down, heart pounding not from nerves, but from the intoxicating rush of victory. Nina leaned toward me, her lips twitching. You didn't just win, she whispered. You destroyed them. I allowed myself the smallest of smiles. They earned it. The rest of the meeting droned on, but no one was listening. The real show had already happened. By the time we were dismissed, the office felt lighter, freer, like a storm had finally broken. People approached me quietly, some offering congratulations, others shaking their heads in disbelief. I walked back to my desk and sat down, staring briefly at the spot where Leela used to sit. It was empty now, and it would stay that way. I hadn't just defended my work, I had made sure no one in that room would ever mistake me for someone they could walk over again. The day after the meeting, the office felt like a different world. Leela's desk was cleared, her personal items boxed and gone. Greg's absence left a gap at the leadership table, one Carla didn't rush to fill. People moved with a strange mix of relief and caution, as if still processing what they'd witnessed. I kept my head down, answering emails, finishing projects. But inside, a quiet satisfaction pulsed through me. My work was mine again, my voice respected. The memory of Leela's frozen expression during Carla's announcement replayed in my mind like a favorite song. Nina caught me in the break room, handing me a coffee without asking. So, she said, grinning, how does it feel to be the office legend? I smirked over the rim of my cup. Legend or cautionary tale? I asked. She laughed, shaking her head. Both. Everyone's going to think twice before messing with you. Her words weren't bragging, they were a promise. And in this business, a reputation like that was priceless. 2 days later, Carla called me into her office. Her tone was businesslike, but there was a glint in her eye I hadn't seen before. We need a new creative lead, she said simply. You've already proven you can handle the responsibility. The words landed heavily, even though I'd been hoping for them. I thought of the late nights, the stolen credit, the sting of betrayal, and how I'd turned it all into ammunition. I didn't hesitate. I'll take it, I said, my voice steady. The new title came with a corner of the office I'd never worked in before, bigger desk, better view, and a plaque with my name on it. Nina was the first to stop by, dropping a pastry onto my desk. For the queen of petty revenge, she said with a mock bow. I laughed, feeling the tension of the last few weeks finally ease. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a reclamation. Every inch of this space, every word in my title, was proof that I'd taken back what was mine and then some. That weekend, Luis and I sat on my balcony, tacos in hand and the city lights stretching endlessly in front of us. He raised his soda can in a toast. You obliterated them, Maya. I bet Leela's still scrubbing her social media. I grinned, taking a bite. I didn't just take my work back. I took their pride. And in this industry, pride is worth more than money. The air was warm, the night alive, and for the first time in months, the only thing I felt was peace-laced, with just a touch of satisfaction. By Monday, word had spread beyond our department. People from finance, HR, even IT started stopping me in the hall with quiet nods of respect. In a place where gossip was currency, my story had gone viral. I'd become a whispered example of how to fight back and win. Carla kept me busy, assigning me high-profile campaigns that had once been Leela's territory. Every project felt like a small victory, each client meeting a chance to prove I deserved the seat I'd taken, and I intended to keep it. The strangest part was the shift in how people spoke to me. The same coworkers who used to brush me off were now eager to collaborate, suddenly valuing my opinion. I wasn't naive, I knew some of it was self-preservation. No one wanted to end up like Leela. Still, there was a new kind of freedom in walking into a room and knowing I didn't have to fight for credibility. I'd already fought the war. Now, I was just collecting the spoils. One afternoon, I caught sight of Greg in the building lobby. He was in plain clothes, a box under his arm, avoiding eye contact. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. But then I remembered the months he'd let Leela strip my work bare while he looked the other way. He passed without a word, disappearing through the glass doors. That was the last time I ever saw him, and I couldn't help thinking that was the cleanest ending he could have hoped for. With Greg and Leela gone, the team's mood shifted permanently. Deadlines felt lighter, collaboration flowed without the constant undercurrent of sabotage. It was as if the office had been holding its breath for months and finally exhaled. Nina joked one day that I should hang a sign over my desk, "Thieves beware." I laughed, but part of me thought it wasn't a bad idea. If nothing else, it would save me the trouble of having the same fight twice. Late one evening, as I was packing up, Carla stopped by my desk. "You did well, Maya," she said. "Not just in the work, in handling them. Most people wouldn't have had the guts to push this far." I smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for guts. I did it because they thought I wouldn't." Carla nodded, her expression unreadable. As she walked away, I realized the truth. Revenge hadn't just protected my work, it had rewritten my place in the agency forever. The first change I made as creative lead was simple: open collaboration boards. No more private folders that could hide theft. Every idea, every draft, every contribution would be documented and credited in real time. Some grumbled at first, people who liked to take credit in the shadows, but most embraced it. Transparency wasn't just a policy now, it was a warning. If anyone tried to pull a Leela again, they'd leave a trail wide enough for me to drive a truck through. Nina thrived under the new system. Her ideas, once drowned out in the noise, started catching attention. One day she stopped by my office, grinning like a kid with a secret. "Maya, I just got my first client request by name." Seeing her glow reminded me why I fought so hard. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about creating a space where people like us didn't have to fight dirty politics just to be seen. Still, old habits die hard. A junior copywriter tried to recycle one of my older pitches for a smaller account, passing it off as his own. The system flagged it instantly, pinging my inbox with a side-by-side comparison. I called him in, let him squirm through a weak excuse, and handed him a printed copy of the policy. "Consider this your one warning," I said. "Next time we skip the conversation and go straight to our." His face told me the message landed. Clients noticed the change too. Projects came together faster, with fewer revisions and more creative spark. Carla pulled me aside during a quarterly review to point out that our department's approval ratings were at their highest in 5 years. IT was satisfying in a different way than revenge, quieter, steadier. I was building something lasting. Now, not just tearing down what was broken. One Friday afternoon, as the team gathered for happy hour, Nina clinked her glass and raised a toast. "To Maya, the only person I've ever seen turn workplace hell into an actual career move." Everyone laughed, but I knew the truth. It wasn't just a career move. It was survival, turned into strategy, sharpened into power, and I had no intention of giving it back. The first real test of my leadership came when a major client sent over a brief that was a mess. Vague goals, unrealistic timelines, and a half-baked concept they insisted was non-negotiable. In the old days, Leela would have caved and burned the team out trying to make it work. Instead, I called a meeting. "We're not killing ourselves over a bad brief," I told them. "We're fixing it before we even start." It was a risk, pushing back this early in my new role, but I learned that setting boundaries early was better than cleaning up later. Carla backed me when I presented the revised proposal to the client, but I could feel her watching closely. The client frowned at first, clearly not used to being challenged. But when I walked them through how our changes would make their campaign more effective, the resistance cracked. By the end of the meeting, they were nodding along, even excited. We got the green light on our version, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't just surviving this job, I was steering it. The project turned into one of our biggest successes that quarter. The client's numbers skyrocketed, and they sent a thank you package to the entire team. Nina got chocolates. I got a handwritten note from their VP of marketing that said, "Glad you didn't let us settle for less." I pinned it to my corkboard, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that power came from knowing when to say no, not just when to say yes. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with the new way of doing things. A few old guard staffers started grumbling, whispering that I was too bold and making waves. I recognized the tone. It was the same one people used when they wanted you to shrink. I didn't. Instead, I doubled down, inviting them to planning sessions and putting their names on successful projects when they contributed. Slowly, their resistance turned into reluctant respect. One night, long after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my office, looking out at the city lights. My desk was stacked with projects, my calendar was packed, and my phone buzzed with constant requests. But unlike before, I didn't feel drained. I felt in control. I'd learned the difference between fighting to keep your seat and fighting to lead from it. And the view from here was worth every battle scar I carried. The next quarter brought an opportunity I hadn't expected, a high-profile pitch to a global brand. Winning it could put our agency on the map in an entirely new way. Carla wanted me to lead the presentation, which meant my work would be under a microscope from both our team and the client's executives. The pressure was heavy, but not the kind that crushed me anymore. Instead, it sharpened my focus. I pulled in Nina and two other trusted creatives, forming a tight unit. If we were going to land this, it would be because we worked like a single mind. The first brainstorming session ran late into the night. Ideas flew fast, walls were covered in sketches, and the floor was littered with empty coffee cups. It felt chaotic, but in the best way, the kind of chaos that only happens when everyone trusts each other enough to throw bad ideas into the mix, knowing something great might emerge. By the time we left, protect us from small losses, but it also guaranteed we'd never score a win big enough to matter. The day of the pitch, the client's executives filed into the conference room, all sharp suits and guarded expressions. I started slow, building a narrative around their brand's history, its struggles, and its untapped potential. Then I revealed our campaign: bold visuals, a tagline that demanded attention, and a launch plan that cut through the noise. For a long moment after I finished, there was silence. Then the CEO leaned back and smiled. "You're either brilliant," he said, "or insane. I think we'll take our chances on brilliant. We got the account." The celebration that night was loud, messy, and well-earned. But what stuck with me wasn't the champagne or the congratulations, it was the realization that I no longer needed to fight for my place at the table. I was the one pulling out the chairs, and anyone who sat here would know exactly how much it took to earn it. With the global account secured, the agency's profile soared. We were getting calls from brands that had never even glanced our way before. Carla was ecstatic, but I knew this kind of momentum was fragile. One bad move, and the glow could fade overnight. I tightened our process even further, clear timelines, smarter client onboarding, and strict creative reviews. Success was great, but sustainability was the real prize. One afternoon, an anonymous email landed in my inbox. It was a tip. Leela, my old rival, had joined another agency and was pitching against us for a mid-tier account. The client was smaller, but the symbolism was huge. Part of me wanted to crush her outright, but the wiser part knew revenge had already been served. This wasn't about her anymore, it was about proving my team could win on our own terms. We went into that pitch prepared, not just to impress, but to listen. While Leela's team leaned on flashy visuals, we asked the client questions no one else had bothered with. By the end, they were talking to us like we were already partners. A week later, we got the news they'd chosen us. Not because we were louder, but because we'd been sharper. The victory was sweet, but not in the way I'd expected. It wasn't about beating Leela. It was about outgrowing the need to. As the year closed, Carla offered me something I hadn't seen coming: a seat at the executive table. It was more than a promotion, it was a signal that my voice now helped steer the entire agency's future. I accepted, but with a condition. I wanted a mentorship program for junior staff. The cycle of silence talent ended here, and I intended to make sure of it. On my first morning as an executive, the city stretched out before me in a web of glass and steel, humming with the same restless ambition that had once tried to crush me. I thought about the battles, the whispered sabotage, the closed doors, the moments I'd had to claw my way through just to be heard. Now, the fight felt different. I wasn't here to prove I belonged anymore. I was here to decide what this place would become. And as I looked out at that skyline, I knew one thing for certain. In my world, talent would rise without having to survive the war I'd fought. Because the next generation wouldn't just inherit my seat, they'd inherit the power to pull up more chairs.